Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining SmartEn and Delta EE webinar this morning. Today we're going to be talking about the 2019 European Market Monitor Map for Demand-Side Flexibility that Delta EE and SmartEn have been in collaboration on. And today I'm joined by my colleague Andreas at SmartEn. If you can say hello to everyone, Andreas.
Hello, everybody.
And it's me as well. It's Philippa Hardy at Delta EE, and that's Pip for short. We'll come back to introductions. Hopefully everyone can hear us okay from the attendee list. If you can't hear us, please do give us a shout in the chat box. Please also ask us questions throughout the webinar. If you look in the GoToWebinar software, you'll be able to see a chat and a questions and a poll box, and we'll be using all of those today. So please, throughout this, do engage with us, send us some messages if you can or can't hear us very well, or if you can't see something, just let us know, and we'll try and rectify it as we go through. So today we've got about half an hour. We're going to talk through the market monitor that we've released, that hopefully you've all read. We're looking at the different maps we've produced. Andreas is going to give us a really good overview of the European policy landscape and how that's encouraging demand-side flexibility. And then we're going to have around 5 minutes, maybe 10 at the end, depending on how eager you all are on question and answers. But to start off, let's just quickly introduce ourselves properly. So I'm Pip, lovely mugshots of us there. So I'm at Delta EE, I'm a principal analyst here, and I lead our research into flexibility. So that's demand-side flexibility. We've been working in this area for a number of years now, pretty much since I started here. And this research forms part of our Flexibility Research Service, which is an annual subscription research service, which aims to help our clients understand the markets, competitors, business models, and key issues shaping the sector, with a specific focus on demand-side flexibility. And Andreas, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you. I'm Andres. I'm the policy analyst here at SmartEn, Smart Energy Europe. SmartEn is the European Business Association for Digital and Decentralized Energy Solutions. This description may be a bit too broad for you to understand what we actually do, but our members include innovators in services and technology for energy and data management, finance and research institutions. So we really have a very broad membership. But our goal is really to take an integrated perspective on the interaction of demand and supply, how we can promote system efficiency through it, and really encourage innovation and diversity, and empower the energy consumers that are driving the decarbonization of the energy sector.
Great.
So. Yes, so let me then give a short overview of why we decided to create this market monitor and how the process was. So both at SmartEn and Delta EE, we're really proud to provide a clear picture of what the energy landscape looks like, so that we can take the best possible and more informed decisions on it. The market monitor was built on top of a report that we publish twice a year at SmartEn. It's called the SmartEn Map. Some of you might already know it. The first edition that came out last year looked at the balancing market across Europe and what the opportunities are for demand-side flexibility in the EU. So this market monitor really expands on it and looks for all possible ways for DSF to be involved in the electricity market. It looks at who are the players involved in it, what are the main stakeholders, what are the different technologies participating in it. And so really it's a further development of this first SmartEn map. By the way, next week SmartEn will also publish a new edition of the SmartEn map. We will be looking into network tariffs and taxes across Europe. So I encourage you to keep up with that work. So if Philippa, if you want to expand a bit on the context from Delta EE side.
Yeah, sure. So like SmartEn, we are actively researching in this area as well. And the Flexibility Research Service is one of a whole host of annual subscription services we have. So this for us was also core. We've been analysing the markets for the last few years and producing individual country reports specifically on demand side flexibility anyway for our clients. So it was a natural collaboration for us and SmartEn to get together on this market monitor map to really provide an independent view. We're both independent organisations to cover as much ground as possible. So we've looked at 21 European markets. We've really stretched ourselves here. Lots of primary research. There's plenty of you on the phone today that myself or Andreas have interviewed, and we thank you very much for your time. But you have input into this, so it really is lots of primary, really good quality industry conversations. And we've also tried to provide the most holistic definition of demand side flexibility. So rather than narrowly looking at demand response and maybe just ancillary services or just turn down, we take a more holistic definition. So we say anything behind the meter, whether that's the commercial, industrial, residential sector, and it doesn't matter to us which asset it is, we're quite technology agnostic. We're looking at any flexibility, whether that's a turn up or down, on or off, or shifting from one time period to another due to any price signals, whether that's a network price signal, the transmission, the distribution, whether that's an energy price market signal or other signals that will incentivize customers behind the meter to be more flexible. So that's just to really give you a bit more of a scope and the purpose of the report that we've done for you. The report is available publicly and you can download it on either of our websites. And the next few slides, I'm going to go over some of the key headlines. So the progress of European markets with demand side flexibility in 2019. This is the overall view, if you like, where we've looked, and it highlights the countries we've looked at. There's 21 there. I think it's quite obvious from this map that clearly there's a lot of activity happening across Europe. There's many dynamic, rapidly evolving markets, and there's a lot of activity that we've found actually in these different markets. France, Great Britain and Ireland are really the top three. They're the most active across all of the categories that we looked at, followed by Germany, Finland, Belgium and the Netherlands. But as I mentioned, there's activity in all 21. Limited in some, maybe because the value streams aren't open, maybe because customers aren't engaged, maybe industry's not engaged as much, but there is some evidence of activity. And so this graph here shows the summary of our current market activity. I just wanted to say that it is worth pointing out that this score is indicating activity levels and evidence of activity levels. I'm not saying that this is a potential opportunity or success of these markets. So please appreciate where this map is coming from. We're trying to provide this independent industry view. Across all of these markets, we find some really commonalities. And that is across ancillary services with industrial loads and distributed generators for industrial customers and aggregators. Those four parts of the market are really where the action is happening today across markets. But there's a lot more, and there's quite a lot I could talk about here. Obviously, I've got a lot of information in my head across all of these 21 markets, and I'm going to try and do it justice in the next 10 to 15 minutes. But to help you understand where this map has come from, the map that you can see here is based on 5 categories. And within each category, we've interviewed, we've done a lot of research to find demand side flexibility and the level of engagement. So we've looked at the value stream availability, so which value streams are open and available to demand side flexibility. We've looked at value stream utilisation, so where is demand side flexibility being monetised. We've looked at the diversity of assets being used in demand side flexibility today. We've looked at the breadth of customer segments engaged, and we've also looked at the competitive landscape, so which industry stakeholders are engaged, what are they doing. So there's a very short summary of the 5 categories we've used to get to this map and to get to this view that you can see here. What I'm going to do on the next few slides is just go through each one to add a bit more flavour to our research so you can help you understand it a little bit more. So I'll start with value stream availability and accessibility. It's important to understand here that what we've done is we've looked at a lot of value streams, so any of the value streams that are available that could be used for demand side flexibility. So that includes ancillary services, interruptible loads, capacity mechanisms, TSO or DSO network charges, day ahead and intraday markets, and any of the new value streams that we see come into the market. For example, new DSO specific products that we're seeing in some markets today. Markets scoring highly here tend to have more openness and accessibility in their value streams to demand side flexibility and limited barriers, but that doesn't mean no barriers, and there's still plenty of things that could be changed to open markets more, so that's just something to appreciate as well. France is a really interesting example here. So France, they have the majority of value streams open to demand side flexibility, which includes the ancillary services, your capacity mechanism and the wholesale markets. And really interesting, they have their NEBEF mechanism, which has been specifically created to allow virtual pools of load to be traded in the wholesale market. So it's a really interesting case study there. But obviously there were still a few barriers to independent players, for example, which I shan't discuss in detail because I haven't got time, but the full report will have more information on that. And then look into a slightly lower marked country, so Spain, for example. Today, no ancillary services are actually open to demand side flexibility, but they do score something because we can see that some value streams are open, so interruptible loads, for example. And interestingly, hourly price signals to domestic customers is merging, so customers can actually opt in to get hourly prices now in Spain, which hopefully will encourage demand side flexibility from the domestic side in the future. So that's the first category. We then separated out the monetisation of demand side flexibility in value streams. As many of you will hopefully appreciate, sometimes a value stream may be open and accessible, but demand side flexibility may not actually be monetised into it. That could be due to a number of reasons. For example, maybe the value stream is too low, is not a big enough incentive to engage. Maybe the market's too competitive. Maybe there's discriminatory regulations that are more directed towards front of meter assets, or maybe some other market dynamics. So we decided to look at this separately. Again, there is some theme between, or some linkage between the first slide I show you on the value openness and the monetisation. For example, the GB market, Ireland and France again score highly, but they don't necessarily have to be linked. So for this, what we've looked at is where and to what level demand side flexibility is actively being monetised in those value streams that are available. And this was based on data where it's available too. France, interesting, again, majority of value streams are open, and there is evidence of demand side flexibility activity in each. So that's a really nice example. Germany scores more high here compared to the first slide, so there are quite high barriers to entry in Germany. However, there's quite a lot of evidence of demand side flexibility being monetised today. Moving on to our third category, we then looked at the breadth of asset diversity used for demand side flexibility. So here what we did is looked into asset classes, so where demand response is using backup generators, maybe CHPs, battery systems, industrial processes, HVAC, EVs, district heat, etc. So we've gone through each asset class and found evidence of it being used for demand side flexibility. Again, we've categorised countries as a high, medium and low based on their activity. So in highly scoring countries, there's quite clearly evidence of activity in the majority of asset classes. So there's a huge diversity in how demand response is being provided today. As I mentioned at the start, industrial loads and distributed generators are quite key to these markets still, but there is evidence of more complex loads, and obviously with newer markets with EVs and batteries, we're starting to see much more innovation there as well. Here, a really interesting market to look to that I thought was Denmark actually. So they have electric boilers and CHPs being used, mainly in district heating, that are optimised for day-ahead markets. It's one of the top countries for EV flexibility trials with fleets and also private vehicles. And there is some trial activity with battery, C&I scale consumption loads and HVAC. And also with domestic dynamic electricity tariffs available by 2021, we do expect domestic assets to also become part of that mix in the future. The fourth category we've looked at then is the breadth of customer segments engaged. This one's a little bit easier. We've only looked at 3 customer segments: residential, commercial and industrial. Countries scoring highly again, activity across all 3. And you'll maybe notice here that Finland is now high. It's another interesting country. They have dynamic time of use signals going through to homeowners. They have industrial customers engaged with aggregators and also some commercial, for example, universities and public buildings. And that's across a variety of different value streams. The Netherlands also has moderate demand-side flexibility activity across all customer segments. So there's a few players there with thousands of aggregated residential scale assets being used for demand-side flexibility today. But there is also activity with EVs, batteries, and on the industrial side as well, so with C&I segments. On the residential scale, obviously it's important to appreciate the different customer segments are maturing in different ways. So the industrial segment and the commercial segment really are the primary segments for where demand-side flexibility is happening today. The residential market is still really quite new still, with a few pockets of examples in France, Netherlands and Germany. We do have a whole separate report on the residential demand-side flexibility market in Europe, and happy to discuss that separately. Last but certainly not least, we look at the competitive landscape for demand-side flexibility. And again, this isn't just aggregators, this is anyone that's participating in these markets. So we include here aggregators, energy companies, ESCOs, technology companies, software companies, manufacturers, basically anyone that is active, we consider in this landscape. And there's a significant number of stakeholders active across Europe. There's some big players, and there's some maybe large energy retailers that are active across markets, but there's also quite a lot of local players. So in most markets, the landscape is dominated by many smaller local players. GB here is the highest ranking country. Again, a really interesting amount of players in the market. There's 45 stakeholders that we've identified. So a highly competitive market, but it also is highly diverse in terms of the competitive landscape. And it is dominated largely by aggregators and energy suppliers, but there is also energy service companies, developers, battery companies, technology companies, both hardware and software, a huge number of new entrants gaining market traction. So there's a lot going on actually in the GB market, with partnerships across the value chain as well. And I think there's genuinely quite a lot of activity across Europe. We're constantly seeing news of mergers and acquisitions, partnerships, and new things happening across Europe, especially in the key markets. So that is the 5th and final category. So these 5 categories created that accumulated map that I showed you in the very first slide. Now, there is a lot more I could talk about. There's 21 markets that I've spent a very long time looking at and spoke to many of you about and had many detailed conversations. So yeah, we could talk all day about this, but we're trying to fit this into a 30-minute webinar. So I'm going to leave it there and pass over to Andreas, who is going to then talk a bit more about the European policy landscape and how that's encouraging demand-side flexibility.
Thank you, Pip, for that broad view that you gave us. So indeed, let's look now into what the latest policy developments have been and why they're important for demand-side flexibility. I don't know, Pip. Yeah, now it works. So as you might know, the Clean Energy Package, Clean Energy for All Europeans package was approved last December and was published in the official journal of the Energy of the European Union before this past summer. This package is composed of a series of directives and regulations that will shape the development of the energy sector in the coming years. For demand-side flexibility, the most relevant pieces of legislation are probably the Electricity Market Design Directive and regulation. As a side note, the regulation is applicable as of today, and the directive will require a national transposition law that has to be ready by the end of 2020 in each member state. So why is the Clean Energy Package so important for demand-side flexibility? We've put up together a series of 5 overarching points that you can check out in our report. I'm going to go over them briefly in this slide. So the first reason it is so important is because it removes many of the undue barriers that were still left for demand-side flexibility. It moves towards smaller bid sizes, for example, for the electricity markets, for example, the ancillary services, which will facilitate the participation of residential demand, for example, and will provide third parties like aggregators an opportunity to participate in the markets. Also important to highlight is that the new legislation guarantees that there is no discrimination based on the technology providing a service. So system operators should take the approach of acquiring a service rather than a technology providing the service. So this will open the gates to new decentralized assets like home storage or electric vehicles, and it will be empowering to them to play an active role in the energy system. So the second important point are price signals. For many demand-side flexibility services right now, the price signals are just not there, be it on wholesale or retail pricing. They still depend on many levels of government subsidies or programs to encourage the use, because the price signals are just not there. The Clean Energy Package intends to change that. It tries to remove the price caps, for example, or encourages the redesign of network tariffs to provide effective signals to consumers. Of course, it also ensures that customers have access to smart meters and dynamic pricing contracts, which are really one of the cornerstones for customers to be able to engage with the energy system. Now, the third point also that we raised is fair market access. The new legislation wants to guarantee that third parties have a fair access to the energy markets, and that because it is it used to be a very closed market dictated by the incumbents, of course. It removes requirements for third parties to go through a customer's supplier, for example, to offer him its services. It removes many of the administrative and technical hurdles that they could be encountering from suppliers to prevent them from accessing customers. Now, on to the next point. The new legislation also guarantees a firm so the previous point, fair market access, it links together with this next point, the access to data. So allowing the clean energy package warranties that third parties can access data from all from the suppliers. Of course, this is always after the consent of the customer. But this is really important for third parties because it allows them to assess the biggest opportunities, or where the biggest opportunities lie for demand side flexibility. Otherwise, the alternative is really just blindly almost choosing or making decisions without all the information. So this will be further developed with a common European data format and framework that will ensure interoperability of different solutions and really to have a homogeneous European market so that all services and solutions are speaking the same language and the same access to data is warranted across Europe. Now the final point, the new legislation ensures that system operators move towards decentralized energy resources, providing flexibility before resorting to physical grid reinforcement. The directive requires the standardization and streamlining of products for the procurement of flexibility, and it also ensures that system operators first look into the market for these products before they themselves try to find solutions through, for example, themselves owning a storage asset. So to sum it up, the new legislation provides really a great framework for the development of demand-side flexibility. There are still challenges that are unresolved that we will have to deal with, and this is precisely what we're trying to do with these mapping exercises, both at SmartEn and Delta EE. We want to raise this awareness of these challenges and have an easy to look at map where we can point out the countries that are lagging behind and really give regulators and give system operators something to think about. Now, before I think this is all from my side on the policy questions. Before we move on to your questions, I think that Pip wanted to mention some things on a poll.
Sure, yeah, thanks Andreas. So before we go into the Q&A section, we just want to know if you want any more information from us. So I'm just going to launch the poll in the webinar software now. So you should be able to tick or pick a box if you want myself from Delta EE, or if you would like SmartEn and Andreas specifically to give you a call, you want to chat with us, you want to learn more about the market monitor, or if you want to learn more about what SmartEn do, you want to become a member there, or if you want to learn more about what we do at Delta EE and what is in the Flexibility Research Service, what else you can get your hands on, or if you just want the free report, if you haven't got it already from the many mail bursts we've sent out, we will be sending it out again, but please tick the box so we know not to spam everyone and we can send it to you. And if there's absolutely anything else, or if you just want a generic chat, I think myself, and hopefully I'll be talking for Andreas as well, we're both really eager to continue to talk to the industry, so we do spare time and just have a general chit chat. So please feel free to tick box 4 as well. More than happy to give you a call there. So I'll leave it open for a couple more seconds. It still looks quite active. But yeah, if you do tick the box, obviously we will get in contact with you in the next couple of days, either via email or phone. And yeah, anyone else that doesn't tick the box, please just get in touch with us. We're quite friendly people and would be quite happy to have a chat. And that then leads us on to the Q&A. Plenty of time for questions now. If I can get back to the presentation.
Yes, we have actually received quite a few questions.
Perfect.
I don't know if we will be able to go through all of them in the time that we have. Probably not. But if we can't answer any some of your questions, please don't hesitate in contacting us. Like Pip said, we will be more than happy to go through them and further develop what we've mentioned here or what you can see in the market monitor. I also wanted to remind you that the public version of the market monitor is available both on Delta EE's and SmartEn's website. And please go ahead, download it, have a deeper look into it. If you also want to have a closer look into what the balancing markets look like and the outlook for demand-side flexibility, just go over to SmartEn's website. You can download the SmartEn map on balancing products. And I hope it's helpful to you and that we can have a further discussion on it. So if you agree, Pip, let's move on to the questions. I have a very easy one. I think it's directed at you. Can we see the data analysis behind the maps?
Of course. So yeah, so we have a free version of the report, as Andrea said. There's a more detailed report that members of the SmartEn Association will have access to, which has snapshots of 5 countries that we have an analysis on. If you want more detail than that and you're not already a SmartEn member, you can join the Delta EE membership. So we have the full analysis and all of my research behind the Market Monitor map. You also have experts ad hoc that you can have a chat with, we can do presentations, and we also have individual country reports which are about 30 odd pages with lots of analysis in there as well. So unfortunately we can't give all that for free. If we could, that would be great, but yeah, at the end of the day we've provided some free research, so if you want any more detail, please get in touch and I'd be happy to discuss how you can access more detail.
Mm-hmm.
And Andreas's one on, there's quite a few actually on regulation. Regulation, there's some detailed ones. The clean energy package as well, there's a few. Do you want to address some of those together? There's one on polls and there's one on...
I have one that a couple that I really want to touch a bit up on. So somebody's asking to what extent regulation on supplier compensation plays a role in the monetization dimension. And what are what are the outstanding challenges that we're still seeing across Europe that the clean energy package hasn't addressed yet? So first, on the first one, on the supplier compensation, of course it is a further challenge on the aggregators that want to participate through demand-side flexibility. But the fact is that this is how the current legislation envisions the compensation to be handled, and there's little that can be changed about that right now. The real issue here is, though, that price signals are not reflecting the true value of demand-side flexibility right now, and this happens across most countries, well, all countries. And one of the main issues here, or one of the main reasons for this being the case, is that we still have a network tariff design that is really that was really designed with the different energy landscape in mind. So the supply compensation is an issue, but what we have to focus on right now is to really move towards a system that provides the right price signals to customers, and this goes through changing the network tariff design, for example, and the taxes, how they're applied on electricity. So we have to move away from static vision of tariffs and taxes, and really embrace the dynamic possibilities that we can have on this. So so yes, these are probably the main challenges that we're still facing, and that the clean energy package hasn't really given a clear solution yet.
And what about just outside of the clean energy package? There's a few questions, again, a few of the regulation questions that maybe we can summarise. Like, what else is happening outside of the clean energy package that will help or address barriers? So we've got a few market questions on barriers.
Yeah.
So yeah, is there any others?
So on outside of the clean energy package, the main way to get involved in changes is probably through the implementation frameworks that are happening right now for the different network codes. So these are the network codes, and so these network codes will be or are already one of the main guiding principles for demand-side flexibility across Europe. As you might know, they're all in the implementation phase, and this is probably the biggest opportunity that that we still have to change things outside of the clean energy package. We at SmartEn are very active on this front. We have we participate actively in these stakeholder consultations and stakeholder groups, and yes, the main challenges are the real transposition of the clean energy package into national level, and this is something that will be developed further this year with the climate plans that the member states are presenting. This is another front where there's still some room for improvement, and we will have to monitor it quite closely.
Cool, thanks, Andreas. Spotted there's a few more questions. There's some statements as well which we can address outside of the webinar. I've got a question on Belgium, which I thought was quite interesting. Maybe it links into another question we've got on imbalance prices. But for Belgium, how do you explain high ranking in the market conditions, yet low ranking in market activity? Happy to take that one offline as well if you need more information. But so Elia, the Belgium TSO, I know has, like most TSOs as well, have really been quite progressive in opening up the market. So quite a lot of the markets there are open, but they have quite I guess, a proactive approach. So they release imbalance prices ahead of time, and quite a lot of industrial customers are already engaged with settling and taking advantage of the imbalance prices. So the market is kind of largely sorting itself out. So even though it's, you know, effectively open and very accessible, it's lower ranking in the activity because the needs aren't as high there. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. It's probably a bit more complicated than a one or two sentence answer, but happy to talk offline about that. But that also ties into someone was asking about imbalance prices. I can't see the question now, too many. Do real-time imbalance prices exist? I wish they did. Real-time prices would be great. Hopefully that's included in the CEP as well going forward. I think the infrastructure, IT infrastructure, would be a bit of a barrier to that, but in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, Pip, let me just jump in real quick because now that you mentioned that question, I've seen many questions regarding pricing and in the question section. So, like I said, next week we will publish the new Smart Map covering network tariffs and taxes. There we look a lot into the different pricing issues and how they affect demand-side flexibility services. So if you want to have a deeper look into that, as I can see through many of your questions, please head to our website next week on the 10th, I think it is. We will release this report, and maybe hopefully it can answer some of your questions if we can't answer them now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Another really interesting question. In the most developed DSF markets, you have identified which obstacle do you see as the greatest to growth in demand flexibility? I think it's a really pertinent question. I think probably maybe worth both of us answering that one. Andreas, do you want to give a perspective more on the policy side, and I'll give a perspective more on the market side?
Yes. So I don't want to sound like I'm repeating myself, but one of the main barriers in even the most developed countries are still the network tariffs. Okay, so you have to imagine a customer in some countries. Imagine the split for the energy bill, right? Like maybe the energy component of the energy bill, of the electricity bill, amounts to maybe 30% at the best cases. So customers really receive, like, the variable part in their bill amounts to just about 20-30%. How are customers going to make or change their consumption patterns based on a few euro cent monthly? So the issue here is that the rest of the electricity bill has just no influence in the signals that customers receive. So this is why this is a very important barrier. Some countries, for example, Denmark, that has 60%, I think it is, of taxes in their electricity bill. There's just no room to provide the right signals to neither to customers nor to service providers. So this is one of the main barriers that we are still seeing, even in the most developed countries.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Definitely better price signals. And I guess the layer on top of that from a market perspective is sometimes we focus maybe a bit too much on maybe the regulator. Like, yes, there's lots of barriers and there's lots that we can address. But what about the other side of it? Like, we're still producing assets that have no connectivity or don't have the right communication protocol in it, or are not easily accessed remotely to be able to access that flexibility. So I think there's a key part around access. And yes, it's a chicken and egg, isn't it? I know that's probably what the next comment's going to be. Give us the right price signals, then we'll innovate. But it's quite complicated at the moment for customers to get engaged, and there's lots of different offerings out there. It's not so simple. The costs of acquiring customers for independent players are quite high, but probably also for any player getting involved in this space, just because the market conditions as they are, and the difficulty in connecting customers to use their flexibility. So yeah, I look more at that side, but probably they're the two greatest barriers, I think, at the moment, as well as well, still questions.
We have a lot of very interesting questions, actually. I want to just go shortly into one. A researcher from a university is asking us where they can get data out. So hopefully, for much of the data, you would come to organizations like Delta E and SmartEn. This is precisely one of the efforts that we're doing. There's a lot of data behind this report that we have. But other than that, regarding public data, this is one of the efforts that the Clean Energy Package is also aiming towards. Having, for example, encouraging NSOE, they have the transparency platform on their website. There you can check a lot of raw data. They've just remodeled it, redesigned it in the past month. It is a very interesting tool where you can access a lot of data without having to ask permission to anybody. A lot of interesting data on the energy markets on a transmission level. But indeed, we're missing the data on customer level, on distribution level, and this is what we need to work towards.
Still getting a lot of questions through. I'm conscious of time. We've been going for 45 minutes, so I think probably what's best, Andreas, is if we can respond to some of these questions offline. I don't want to keep everyone on the line for too long, but thank you
Absolutely
so much for your engagement today to the audience. Thank you, Andreas, for joining us and presenting a wonderful presentation. This is recorded. It will be on the website, and yes, there is a free report out there that we can send as a follow-up. But once again, thank you so much for joining and for your interaction today. We hope you enjoyed our webinar, and we look forward to hosting another webinar soon.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening to our webinar.
Thanks everyone, bye-bye.